Hello. Two things I want to show you today, both slightly unusual formats. This is a dictation machine from Grundig using these rather zany cassettes, and next is a Sony NT2 using these really tiny cassettes. Both of these are eBay finds. The NT2 is untested and the Grundig Stenorette is not working. So let's start by getting that one fixed, and then we'll have a play with the Sony later. Let's get stuck in. Okay, let's have a look at this. Grundig Stenorette 2070, Steno-Cassette 30. Right. There's a bit of wear there. Made in, and then I can't read that. 3-volt adapter it says. Well, we'll probably run it on batteries. Initially, anyway. And then these are the weird and wonderful cassettes. There's some sort of carry case thing and instructions. Right. I'm sure it doesn't work. So let's first just see what it does or doesn't do. Challenge number 1 is to find where the batteries go. Well, I was going to look at the instructions on how to fit batteries. Let's see if any of this is in English. That's in German. My German is not great. I know I have a smattering of German. Ah, here we are. English. 2 batteries. Insert the batteries. Or rechargeable batteries. Press and hold button 7 and then remove the sliding cover. Okay. Press and hold this button and then remove the sliding cover. Looks like 2 AA's. The contacts don't look in terrible condition. I'll give them a little clean and fit a couple of batteries in that. Bit of IPA and cotton bud. Can I work it with this lid off? That's clearly record. You'd push that down and the switch would slide across. That would be off. I guess that's rewind or something, but it's not doing anything at all. How do you get it to latch into play? Oh, that's play, I think, and that holds it into play. So that must be stop and rewind, and that would be fast forward. The legends are rubbed off, but yes, that's rewind. Okay, let's check that we have the voltage on the battery terminals. 1.5 volts, right, 3 volts. Then onto the last terminal, 3 volts. So we have 3 volts on the battery terminals. But nothing else. And it sounds dead. not like the motor's running or anything, it really is completely dead. Alright. Okay, let's take the batteries out. So, 2 screws there, not sure if there's any more screws under this label or anywhere else. It's clearly had some use. There's a little bit of shininess to the head, so it's done a few hours, I suspect. Okay, well, we don't have any option but to take those screws off and see what happens. So that's the top with the microphone. Okay, back has come off. Quite surprisingly, the drive belt appears to be in good order. Maybe that's worth replacing, but it's good enough to get by with. Yes, it's worth replacing. You can see a little bit of slop in it, but good enough to test it with for the moment. What year is this thing? Lots of surface mount components. I think that was a bit of a surprise. So the battery terminals appear here, I think. Let's just test that again. Let's confirm that we have 3 volts. Across here. Oh. 1.5 volts. How is that possible? What a strange thing to have 1.5 volts there. There's usually, in this sort of scenario, if they provide, and the instructions say they do, a rechargeable battery option, that it would somehow indicate to the electronics that is not running on a pair of normal AA's. They wouldn't have had it recharge AA rechargeables. They'd have had their own special charger, a rechargeable battery, probably. That coupling between the 2 batteries doesn't seem to go anywhere other than between the 2 batteries. You know, I might set you up on the tripod so you can see better. So we have 3 volts there. Here, this seems to be a switch, and that's all very green and gungy. So let's scrape off the gunge. I think we'll use some WD-40. I've taken the battery out because even though it's only 3 volts, it's enough to do damage, you know. So let's try to degunge this connection. Need a little switch cleaner on that port. That switch there. Three volts. Shall we see if it does something now? That's looking quite promising. And I don't know if you can see, this is a fluorescent light, so that's giving me a nice pulsy light, and you can see the effect of the tacho running backwards. So it's running a little slow because the belt's not in good order, so let's replace that battery, that belt. Hopefully have something suitable. Let's try this one. It's maybe too thick. Yeah, I think that belt's too thick because it's pulling on the motor. Motor's got rubber supports on it there. Don't think it's going to like that. We'll give it a whirl, but I think it'll run at the wrong speed. Actually, seems to be working just fine. It's running, if anything, slightly fast, I believe. Seems to be a lot of buzz. Should we switch this fluorescent light off? That certainly helped. It really doesn't like the fluorescent light, does it? Okay. Is that rewind? Is there anything on this tape at all? If not, we'll make a recording. Okay, let's try to do a test recording. Where's rewind? Rewind the tape. Right, press this record button down. Oh, no, that's not it. Where's the record? That's it. Right, red light is on. Testing, testing, 1, 2, 3, 4, testing. So hopefully that's making a recording. Let's rewind. Check the volume level. No recording. No recording? That's disappointing. Let's try the other tape. I'm not sure what the proper eject mechanism is, but we'll just try the other tape in case there's a recording on here. I'm not interested in making recordings. I only want the machine to be able to play them, really. So, which is rewind. Anything on this tape? I mean, it really sounds like it is playing something because you can hear noise. But there's no obvious sound. So we could have a fault in the amplifier. Oh dear. How can I tell? Should we try one more test recording? Testing, testing, 1, 2, 3, 4, testing. Not only is there no speech, but I don't think you can hear a recording having been made. You'd expect some sort of click as it starts and stops. So either there's no recording at all, or there's no playback at all. Or both. If I attempt to work it without a cassette in there, what does it do? That's some sort of test. That's some sort of warning that there's no cassette in there. How does it know? How does it know there's no tape in there? At least I think that's what's going on. Let's read the instructions. An audible signal is emitted at end of tape. I think it's the end of tape signal it's doing. Let's slide this cover over. Okay, that's on record. Right, it's in record. It gets to the end of the tape. It's a rather mixed up sort of noise, but it does indeed make some horrible noise. So let's just try to rewind and make a test recording once more. Testing, testing, 1, 2, 3, 4, testing.
Make a test recording once more. Testing, testing, 1, 2, 3, 4, testing. Testing, testing, 1, 2, 3, 4, testing.
Okay. So the only problems we seem to have is a lot of warble, because I think this is totally the wrong belt. So we need to change that belt for something a lot thinner. And the other thing is we need to make sure that if I'm going to use this to transfer people's tapes, that I have an audio output. So the original design I don't think has a headphone socket. Let me have a look. No, it doesn't, does it? There's no headphone socket. So a modification is going to be required, unfortunately. Looking at the original design, that goes onto there. I think, no, that's the microphone. So we have some space here. Maybe I can fit an audio output socket there. So a small modification required. There's not much depth though, a very small socket. But somehow I need to make that happen. Even if I just have to put a wire and a socket on the end of it. Okay, that's probably what I'll do. So I need to get a drive belt and find a way to fit an audio output socket on there. Okay, so what I have going on here is a 3 kHz tone playing out of this digital audio recorder into this recorder here, which I'll now stop. So that can be used for a wow and flutter test. I'm not expecting very good results, but I do have a better belt on here now, and if we put it under the strobe light here, well, it's a fluorescent tube, I think we can see that the speed looks much more stable. I don't know if you can see that. Let me zoom you in. Right, so it's running very slightly slow, I think, but you're definitely within, you know, a couple of % or so. That's certainly close enough for the accuracy you'd expect on this sort of thing. So let's now listen to that tone. I'm sure it'll sound dreadful. I'll do a wire and flutter test on it later. Wow. For a dictation type format, I don't think you'd say that's unreasonable. It's not a format that's ever intended to be used for music, so I don't think that's unreasonable. Something I did want to show you here, let's do you a close-up of the audio head. Now, it may be an optical illusion, but it looks like we've got a massive azimuth error. That's to say, the head is tilted. It seems to be tilted. Well, part of the same panel. What? It seems to be tilted that way, I would say. But we can't really tell if that's true until the tape is actually engaged, because it might not really be the angle it looks. But if it is massively out, no problem, because there's a adjustment there. So I can put a small screwdriver through and adjust it. When I get some tapes in with known good recordings, I'll just adjust it until they're nice and clear. So I'm not worried about an azimuth error. But what is a bit more interesting, I think, about this format, if you look at that audio head there, I don't want to touch it with this, just want to point. It appears that the head is at the top and the rest of this is blank, is unused. So it means, looking at the cassette here, that probably only the top half of the tape is used and the bottom half of the tape is wasted. That's madness, because the tapes don't flip over. So half the tape loaded in the cassette is never used. They could have arranged for a full height audio head and then probably lowered the tape speed and still got something approaching the original signal to noise ratio, because they have more recorded energy on the tape. So that's a little bit disappointing. It's true that if you'd lowered the speed, you'd probably still not do much for the high frequency audio response, but they could have done more with this format with a bit more thought. I don't want to start adjusting this azimuth setting right now until I've got a tape to test it with, a recorded tape to test it with. But it's suddenly, to me, that does look wrong. It does look as though it's leaning. Of course, it doesn't care from its own recordings because they'll be recorded with that azimuth setting, so it won't care. Right, so the next thing I need to solve is that we don't have any audio output connector. We do have quite a big gap here at the end of the recorder into which I might be able to fit a socket, but I'm also intrigued as to what these lands are. I'll bet these lands in here, they must have a purpose, and it might be that they're test points or that there is some sort of option for a headphone socket. So I'm going to have a look at these and see if any of those produce the... We'll have a look at these pads, these lands, and see if any of them produce the audio output, because if so, I can save myself pulling the machine apart to try to get to the speaker contacts at the back of here. I don't know where they are, and I don't really want to pull this apart if I don't need to. So it might be that I can collect audio output on here. Maybe the easiest way to solve that is to play that tape I've just recorded and look at these signals with an oscilloscope. Let's see what I can find. Okay, I think I found the point I need, and it's got about 1.5 volts peak to peak. You can see the wire in there, but that's clearly the signal. Right, so they're the points I need to connect a audio output socket to. Okay, so I have this now connected to, actually I chose a 3.5mm socket in the end, just suited my cabling better. So that's working, and it presents the speaker signal also to this, which I can connect up to my audio recording equipment. And we can have a look at how bad that wear and flutter is. Fairly bad, I suspect, so it may benefit from a new drive belt. This was the original one, which is very, very thin, so I'll see if I can get hold of something closer to that. But basically, it's now working. So that's all well and good. We have this machine working.
Testing Steno-Cassette.
It's definitely working. For an audio format, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. There was a bit of sibilance on the sound, and I think that's just a limitation of the original machine. But of course, what we're really interested in are these wonderful cassettes, aren't we? Because it has this gauge thing, this spiral works its way along to the end. And if you look in there, you can see the spiral cut there, and there's a gear here. So I wonder if I can take this apart and show you that. It may not be possible, but let's have a look what happens. As the tape progresses, you can see here a small gear connected to the left-hand spool, and that is winding this long spiral shaft along. Oh look! Take a closer look at that. You can see that the spacing is not even. So they've thought about that because the ratio of the spool rotation varies as the amount of tape is loaded on the cassette, it needs to run the pointer at a different speed from the start to the end of the tape. So I think it runs the pointer faster per revolution at the beginning and slower to the end, and you can see the spiral get closer together, the grooves. Let's just stop that. Let's take a close-up of this cassette construction. So we can see this long spiral screw thread here with a much coarser pitch at the start than it does at the end. So at the end, the pointer needs to move slower per revolution. The drive is picked up from this spool here, the left-hand spool, from this gear, and then I think it goes through a reduction gear. We'll try and see the reduction gear there. Getting some reflections, but there's this top gear goes onto here and then onto this worm drive, which then rotates the long spiral. Now it would be really nice if I could take this apart and show it in more detail, but it is not a screwed construction. It may be clipped. I think it's clipped construction, and it may not come apart in a non-destructive fashion, though it might. Maybe I can push those in. Shall we give it a whirl in the interest of science? There's no direct connection between the tape on the spool. If you were to take the tape off the cassette and wind it by hand and put it back in, this wouldn't know where it was and it would get lost. Though whether it's got the intelligence, if it runs off the end to just click, 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 and then go back to the beginning, it might do. So it might be able to reset itself if it does run off the end. Let's see if I can open it to find out. Oh, a little bit of slack on the tape. Let's just take that up. So the construction is fairly similar to a normal compact cassette. I think the way the auto stop works is it detects when it can't see the spools rotating, or one of the spools rotating correctly. So here's the first gear, which meshes with this top here. Then that transmits to this gear, which has a worm drive to this final gear before the spiral. Let's put that back on. And then this is the pointer. And I don't know if this pointer has any way of overrunning the end in such a way that it would just click at the end if it went too far. It would take a lot of turning to find out. Or would it just jam up? What would happen? Well, there's no freedom at the end, but if it went far enough, yes, I think it would just fall off the end and not jam up. If by some accident it became out of sync with the actual tape position. Thick piece of metal band here. I think it's a secure way of mounting the tape onto the spool so that when it comes to the end there's no risk of it snapping off the spool. I'm sure that's why they've done it that way, yes. Right. Let's try to put it back together. Well, nobody said it would be easy. Oh. Mental note then, if ever I have a Steno-Cassette come in that needs repair, charge a fortune for it. See the unusual drive there. Let's just confirm that this cassette survived that ordeal. Not rewinding very well, is it? Not happy, is it? Oh dear. Just confirm, I can rewind okay on this one. No obvious differences. Ah, look, I've put this in incorrectly. Yes, that's rotated. Did you spot that as I was working on it? That's correctly assembled now, I believe. Okay, that looks better. Let's confirm I can rewind it. Much better. And watch this wonderful thing wind its way back to the beginning. So here we have something else to play with. It's a Sony NT2 recorder using the diminutive MT cassette format, which is digital audio recording. Now, I can't begin to tell you all the ins and outs of this format as well as Matt from TechMoan has, but it's nice to have a machine here. Let's just give it a whirl. Rewind the tape, I think, first. Top, it says. So, reset the counter. Oh, it's switched off. Do we press play? And counter reset. I believe there are recordings on this tape. Let's fast forward a little. How do you stop? Other side. Maybe the recordings are at the other end of this tape. Or are you rewinding it now? Let's fast forward to the other end. Well, whether we're fast forwarding or rewinding is a matter of opinion. Okay, fast forward. End, it says. Rewind then. Okay. That's playing very solidly. So there we have the Sony NT2 M. I think this M is a modification to do with the recording system, or it might be remote control, but it's not relevant for what I'm using it for. I just wanted to show you this NT tape. It's quite a clever design that the tape is covered by this door, which seems to swing either way, somewhat reminiscent of V2000, and for very good reason, because this format uses a spinning helical head, just like videotape, and this can be inserted either way round, just like V2000. So, in a way, this is a logical successor to the V2000 videocassette format that can go in both ways round. Okay, I just thought I'd share that with you. Let's try to remember how it works. So we're going to put side A in. And I believe this is the play button. I'm somewhat confused as to how the controls work, but so we're playing forwards and we have good sound. I don't believe there's anything on the other side of the cassette. Okay. Now I need to confirm that the machine works properly on both directions. So if I flip the tape over, I should still get music on one side of the tape, and if I do, then it's playing both sides properly. So forward is now silent, and backward. Oh, good. And you see counting down. That's working well. Right, I wanted to have a little play with something else here. I've got my original mini disc recorder here, or one of my mini disc recorders that I had from way gone by. And what I wanted to point out was that the remote control to this mini disc recorder, which fits in there, has the same, or what appears to be the same, connector. Well, is it? I think so. So let's plug this in here and remind ourselves how glorious mini disc is. Oh, doesn't sound very good, that machine. Right. I think that's why I stopped using this mini disc recorder, was that the mechanism is starting to sound a bit graunchy. But it still works. Okay. What happens then if we plug that into here? Fits. Oh, it's gone into record. Whoa! No, stop! Oh no. Well, that was a bit of a surprise. I didn't expect that. Oh no, it's gone to record again. No, not good. So I guess the stop, the play instruction on this is the record instruction on that. Right, we will most definitely not plug that in again because I'm going to ruin my test tape. I do hope I only recorded on the wrong side. Yes, I think I've got away with it there. Alright, no huge harm. But just a reminder to not do that. Okay, this is just for mini disc. Let's keep that on the mini disc. Right. Despite that, this does appear to work beautifully. Should we see if we can get a closer look at that head drum? Oh, that's not bad. So we can see the very small helical head drum there. And my understanding is the way this works is that it doesn't need to track precisely the original recording. That it takes several passes and puts up with misalignment and just captures the data on multiple passes of the head. So that removes a lot of the fragility of a very small format helical tape scan. Let's also have a look at this tape. Remember this door that opens both ways, which I mentioned is the same as V2000. What actuates the door? Dare we find out? Just like that. Extremely small. I mean, in a way, you being so zoomed into it kind of defeats understanding how ridiculously tiny this format is. Let's give you something to compare it with. So here we have UK 10p coin. The tape is just a little bigger than that. It is ridiculously small. And you have to wonder what Sony were thinking of. That they made a format where the cassette was so small, as they did with the micro MV video format. Who was calling for a cassette this small? Who thinks this is easy to handle? Who would want an audio format so small and potentially fragile? I don't know why they thought a small cassette was the right direction to go in on this. Now I'll put it into play and let's see if we can see the tape rotating. I don't know if this is a little dirty actually, this window. Maybe I'll clean that. The other thing is, I discovered just now it was recording on the tape where I didn't want it to. So there's a way, presumably, of disabling recording. There are some record tabs, well, something like it, record switches, these red dots. I don't know how they work. I'd have to read the instructions. You see, it all becomes too fiddly. It's too small. I'm assuming that's a record inhibit switch, but I just can't see it. I'm sorry, Sony, but it was a problem looking for a solution, this. Right, let's clean that window. That's fairly easy. I won't use any IPA on this if I don't have to. I'll just use a cotton bud. Can you see the cassette moving? Barely. There's hardly any point putting a window on it, is there? Other than to see maybe that there is a tape in there, because you can't really see how much tape is left. It's just too small. But despite all that whinging about it, it does work, and it is very cute. But I have to say, I'm not sure of the exact vintage, but I'm guessing the vintage of these two units is broadly similar, since they have the same remote control socket. So let's just have a quick think. This has got 44.1 kilohertz sample rate. This is 32 kilohertz sample rate. This can record up to 80 minutes. This can record up to 60. That does long play, so it can record even longer than that. In terms of size, well, a mini disc is slimmer. I think the overall volume is probably similar. I just don't quite understand what this was invented for, what it can do that mini disc can't. I guess there's a few things around. You can record the timestamp on here, but there's nothing that would have prevented that sort of feature being added to mini disc. Maybe it was a case of, well, you can't tamper with this, so this is good for police evidence, and that's what these were heavily used for. But in general, I think you'd have to say that minidisc is, for most use cases, easier to use. I should think that the minidiscs themselves are cheaper than those tapes. I don't know how much these tapes cost new, but I can't imagine they were cheap. So, it really was a solution looking for a problem. Here's the packaging that tape came in. So, what's this? Instructions and labels, I think. What else could you put in there? More batteries, perhaps? I believe there is a rechargeable battery option here. It does take a small coin cell, very small coin cell. I'll show you that in a moment. It's not a normal size. Not a size I've ever seen, or barely ever seen before. So we open this. So that's a Vato 1220. So it's a slightly unusual cell. I'll check that one, shall I? Yeah, 200 millivolts. So we'll need a new one of them. I'll change it, even if I don't actually need that function to work. Yes, it's an interesting format, and I can now cover that one. I'm happy that one's working properly. But I'm not sure I agree with Sony ever having invented it. And I'm not sure I actually agree with the Stenorette thing either, this Steno-Cassette. I'm not sure that needed to be invented either, but sometimes these manufacturers go out on one and just invent something for the hell of it. Well, I hope you've enjoyed looking at these unusual formats. Do remember to like, share and especially subscribe, and I'll do more content on audio and video technology in the near future. Bye for now.